Welcome to the 46th episode of the Reading and Writing Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Rutherford. Stay tuned for my interview with Lloyd Kaufman.
Well, this is Jeffrey Deaver, author of most recently The Burning Wire, and soon to be author of the next continuation James Bond novel. I spend a lot of time writing, a lot of time researching my books, but when I'm not doing that, I love listening to the Reading and Writing Podcast, which you can hear at readingandwritingpodcast.com.
Well, welcome back to the podcast. My guest today is Lloyd Kaufman, film director, producer, screenwriter. Kaufman is the co-founder of Trauma Entertainment and the director of many feature films, including The Toxic Avenger. In addition, Kaufman has written a series of books for people who are interested in directing and producing independent films. The latest book in that series, Sell Your Own Damn Movie, has just been published. Lloyd, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you so much, and this is the highlight of my 40 years of failed cinema, to be on your podcast. Thank you.
Well, thanks for saying that. We only have a few minutes, but I'm just curious, how does one sell their own damn movie, in your opinion?
Well, I've written about 400 pages, so since you only have a few minutes, I think the most important thing is that you need to, if you're a true artist and you don't want to be controlled by one of the giant conglomerates, you have to put on your whoring hat and go out and whore for your art. Picasso did it. Charlie Chaplin did it. Many of the greatest artists, in fact, that caveman that's in the Werner Herzog movie obviously did it. There's all sorts of stuff where he publicized. A lot of artists feel that promoting their art is not a good thing. They feel it's a merchant thing. It's a Jewish merchant. They feel it's low class. Well, it's not. It's stupid not to promote your own art. Otherwise, if you leave it to 20th Century Fox or Paramount or one of those corporations, your career will be cut off at the legs, as happened to Buster Keaton and as has happened to Preston Sturges and countless others who are geniuses. So get out there and do it yourself. Now, my book tells you many ingenious ways. Troma and I have been doing it for 40 years. And the fact that I was able to sell a book to my publisher, the fact that Elsevier Publishing or Focal Press, whatever they're called, the fact that I convinced them to let me write a book, that should be proof enough that I know how to sell.
Exactly. Well, I'm curious with your founding of Trauma, was it a situation where you tried to make it the traditional route in the movie business?
You mean did I try to make it and fail? Is that what you're trying to say? Was I a flop? And out of desperation, I made The Toxic Avenger and went to Yale University and all that because I was a stupid idiot with nothing to say? Is that what you're getting at?
Not at all.
Yeah,
Not
that's
at all.
perfectly okay because you're right.
So what was the motivation for starting?
The motivation
Trauma?
is to be an artist. The motivation is to have artistic freedom. That's the motivation, to do what Jean Renoir did, to do what Rossellini did, to walk in the footsteps of Stan Brakhage and Charlie Chaplin and John Ford and Howard Hawks, to have total control, to be an auteur-director. And that is why in 1974 we started Trauma Entertainment. It's the longest, in fact, I've never had a job. I've never had a job in my entire life. Well, I guess I've had a few, but I've never had a career other than Trauma Entertainment. And we started Trauma Entertainment so that we could make movies unfettered by the suits and the accountants and the lawyers and the cocaine. Well, actually, those guys are not so bad. But we wanted to have total freedom and also give the opportunity to other independent artists such as Trey Parker, who we started, and Oliver Stone, who started with me, and a host of other independent geniuses who started their careers in the fresh air of Trauma. That's the whole idea. I was a big fan of the Cahiers de Cinema, the French magazine that was compiled by the Cinémathèque Française and that was authored by Jean Truffaut and Chabrol and Melville, and they were all journalists. And they propounded the auteur theory of cinema, which says that if you want to make good movies, the movie is the director must be the author of the movie. It's the director's event. The director must have 100% control over the art. And that has been my theory and the theory of Michael Herz, my 40-year partner. And whether you like our films or not, they reflect our souls, and we can throw off these mortal coils with the notion that at least we had the privilege of presenting what we thought was art and what we thought was emotion that was personal and intimate and derived from our hearts to our audiences. Well, as opposed to what you get in the New York Times every day, full-page ads for bad bosses. Ooh, Eat, Pray, Love. Ooh, Larry Crown. Oh.
Well, when you started, obviously there were no Lloyd Kaufman Sell Your Own Damn Movie books out. How did you figure it out yourself? Was it a process? And along the way, what do you feel like? Is there something in your mind of that you would characterize as maybe your biggest business mistake that you figured out along the way?
Well, those are very good questions. The notion of independent, low-budget movies has always been around. You know, when the studios were being developed, the Hollywood studios, there was a Poverty Row. Columbia Pictures began on what they called Poverty Row, and because Harry Kahn was a great visionary, it produced some really great movies and became a major division of a devil-worshipping international media conglomerate called Sony. So there have always been low-budget filmmakers and film producers, and some of those directors who worked for the Poverty Row films were very good. So I saw that there were indeed good directors out there who were making movies on low budgets with good scripts and provocative themes and good acting. So I figured, well, okay, it's been done before. I'm not the first. And then in terms of the organizing Troma, I just was 19 and figured when you're that age, or 20 or 21 or whatever, you don't think you will die, so you try things. And we live in we live in the greatest country in history for that kind of endeavor. So I got lucky and was able to start a company that has been going on now, and we own about 1,000 movies, and we've made about 100 of them. And there were the books that I read were Chaplin's autobiography and King Vidor. King Vidor is a tree. I think his autobiography was called that. Preston Sturgis wrote a book called Between the Flops. Fun in a Chinese Laundry by von Sternberg. So there were what I didn't read were the books by people who wrote about how to make movies who never made movies, and that's what most of your books are today. I've written Make Your Own Damn Movie, Sell Your Own Damn Movie, Direct Your Own Damn Movie, Produce Your Own Damn Movie. I've written 6 books, and I actually have made movies, and that's what makes my film Sell Your Own Damn Movie quite unique.
And what motivated you to write these books?
Another great question. The history of Troma was very difficult at the beginning. And the mainstream and the McCarthy mentality, the blacklisting mentality, is still very much a part of Hollywood. It's a lot slicker, but it's still a society that is following orders. It's still very fascist, even though it's cloaked in the limousine liberal vestment. But it's a horrible environment. And once Troma became successful, once our studio became successful, Michael Herz and I decided to devote some of our intellectual and spiritual and economic capital to supporting independent art. And I decided that I would write essays and on you go to Troma.com or LloydKaufman.com, which is a fan site, there's a lot of essays I've written called Lloyd's Roids, which talk about various points, various themes of political issues or sociological issues that get in my craw. And I thought I would try to give some inspiration to young people who might not want to be part of Rupert Murdoch's great empire.
Phone tapping empire.
They could read my that's exactly. Well, I'm sure that's not all he's done.
Oh, I'm sure not.
And hopefully he will go to jail, and hopefully that one of my writers. I'm writing Toxic Avenger Part 5 now, and one of them just came to the doors. So luckily somebody's letting him in. Sorry, that's why.
That's okay. That's okay.
So the point is, I wanted to inspire, and the fact that I think of the Troma. The fact that Troma, a movie that makes a company that makes movies with head squashings and dancing, singing and dancing chicken Indian zombies and stuff like that. The fact that we make movies like Terra Firma and Romeo and Juliet, movies that on the surface have absolutely no commercial prospects. And yet we've succeeded for 40 years. If idiots like us could do it, then that would give hope to anybody who reads my book or books that they can do it. Because not everybody is interested in making anti-fast food movies that are musicals with hard-bodied lesbians and dancing and singing chicken Indian zombies. That is
and how have you been able to do it? You just mentioned that on the surface, a lot of your movies don't have a ton of commercial potential, and yet it's all you've done for your life. How have you made it work?
Well, they're very entertaining, and there is a big audience for movies that are thought-provoking and movies that are funny. We combine the genres. A movie like Poultrygeist, Night of the Chicken Dead, or Citizen Toxie, the fourth Toxic Avenger movie, for example, are dealing with interesting social issues, yet they're extremely amusing, and there are lots of people out there who really don't want to see bad bosses. They really are tired. They don't want to see Adam Sandler. Yes, Michael Bay's trailer for that wonderful Transformers movie got 700 and kabillion hits or views on YouTube. But there are thousands and thousands of people with a brain who are not so interested in looking at Transformers Part 62 and want to see Troma movies. The guys who made Crank and who are now making the reboot of Ghost Rider, those directors are big Troma fans, and they say that in a fair world, if Poultrygeist had indeed been treated, given a little bit of respect by the media, I don't mean reviews, but attention by the media, that it should have been a huge mainstream hit. It's a lot funnier, it's a lot more entertaining, a lot more thought-provoking, and certainly a lot more intelligent than 99% of the garbage that's made for $100 million. It's just that Troma doesn't have the control over the vertically integrated media that Paramount, Sony, and the others have.
Right. Well,
luckily,
I'm curious.
Luckily, you guys have paid attention to me, and I have a feeling when this runs on your blog, my book is going to be selling hundreds and thousands of copies.
Oh,
I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Well, I'm curious, with the technology tools and digital cameras getting cheaper and cheaper, are you surprised that you don't see more kind of like Robert Rodriguez's first movie, El Mariachi, which was shot for $7,000? And I'll admit, I have two small kids, so I'm not, one who's up on the latest in terms of independent cinema in the U.S., but it just seems to me that there are a lot of people who still try to go the traditional route of Hollywood while the tools are out there. I'm just surprised that we're not seeing a lot more people kind of going out on their own and making kick-ass movies on the cheap.
Well, Jeff Rutherford, you bring up a perfect point. The good news of today's filmmaking world is that the making of cinema has been democratized. In the same way that when I started making films, my first movie, Battle of Love's Return, which featured Oliver Stone in his the first time he ever did anything with a movie, that film still cost about $8,000 back in 1970. So today that would be probably come out with inflation to $2 billion. You had to be rich to make a movie back in those days, and until the digital revolution, you had to have money. Even the Troma movies, the Poultrygeist, Night of the Chicken Dead, was a 35 millimeter movie. It's still $500,000. That's a lot of dress shops that you could set up for little trendy restaurants for $500,000. So now, though, with the advent of the digital miracle, you don't need money. You don't have to have money to make movies. What you do have to do is know how to sell them. You have to, if you want to be supported by your art, you can't make no-budget movies and expect the New York Times to have any interest in it. The New York Times, when I made Battle of Love's Return, the film critic was so interested. I didn't have money for a screening room. The film critic for the New York Times was so interested, he actually came to my mother's house, and I showed him the print of Battle of Love's Return in my bedroom on a pull-down 16-millimeter screen. Today, with Poultrygeist, Night of the Chicken Dead, after 40 years, after being in, after Quentin Tarantino, Trey Parker and Matt Stone, the Neville Dean and Taylor, what's his name, Smith, all these guys who've been influenced, Takashi Miike, they've all been influenced by Troma and me, and yet New York Times, when they reviewed Poultrygeist, they put it in the shit section, the film in review, the etc.
Right.
The etc. section. There's a big Adam Sandler movie opening today, and they 2 pages of reviews, and A.O. Scott twisting himself into a pretzel to try to say something good about the White Castle Part 2 movie. But meanwhile, I, who have been doing this for 40 years, who left an indelible mark. The theaters are still playing movies we made 40 years ago. There are retrospectives all over the world in places like the British Film Institute, and I'm lecturing at Oxford, for Christ's sake. But meanwhile, the New York Times, throws me in with the politically correct first-time documentary maker, but that's the mindset. If you're not
so with the democratization of cinema, why are more people not going out and doing it on their own? Why
they are doing it on their own. They're doing it. There are thousands of movies being made. The problem is that not everybody is a Buster Keaton. Not everybody is a Stan Brakhage or a Trey Parker.
Sure.
But there are tons of great movies being made. 2 of our employees just made one called Mr. Bricks. Mr. Bricks is a heavy metal murder musical. It's brilliant. It's totally artistic. It's great. But I don't think any of the mainstream film festivals will take it. They're starfuckers. They want to, they want the independent movie has to be totally acceptable. It's got to be like Hobo with a Shotgun. If that had been made, and in fact, everybody reviewed Hobo with a Shotgun, and I'm not putting that film down. It's a good film, but it's a safe film. 20 years ago, it would have been considered, wow, this is pretty wild. But today, right. It's like a Troma movie that was made 20 years ago, and I think most of the reviews of that movie were of that kind, and so naturally Sundance and so they can fill some seats at midnight, they'll book it. But the Troma movies, which are movies of the future, no matter how good they are, because they come from the heart and they are totally made without any thought of pandering to the pocketbook of the media, get ignored. Luckily, Jeff Rutherford doesn't ignore us.
So, given what you're saying, it would seem to me, and I think what you're saying is true, that the film festivals that build themselves 15 or 20 years ago as being alternative to mainstream cinema have now been co-opted because they ultimately they want that fame. Wouldn't you say that there's an opportunity out there ripe for someone to put on and produce a kind of like the Fringe Festival that they do for theater in New York?
Well, Troma began about 13 years ago. Trey Parker and Matt Stone and I went to the Sundance Festival with Cannibal the Musical, and it was so unpleasant. The atmosphere was so horrible, and clearly the Sundance people were not fans of true independent cinema. So we, partly inspired by Trey and Matt, we set up the Troma Dance Film Festival. We had it for 10 years. We presented it in Park City, Utah, at the same time, same place as the Sundance Festival, except that you don't have to pay money to submit your movie. We think it's a disgrace that these film festivals charge money for a movie to be submitted, especially since the major festivals, in my opinion, are fixed. You can see the movies for free at Troma Dance, and there's no VIP policy. And we recently outgrew Park City, Utah, so we moved away from Sundance, and now Troma Dance Festival is in Asbury Park, New Jersey. And Asbury Park, of course, has the word ass in its first syllable, so it's a very good venue for
a great combination.
Actually,
and when is the next one?
City. The next Troma Dance is April. It comes up once a year in April. TromaDance.com. If you want more information or if you want to submit your movie, it's all free. And we've had some great movies there. Wonderful, wonderful films.
So check it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, one of the points I make in a lot of my book, Sell Your Own Damn Movie, is I think ahead of the time, because one of the reasons that I think Troma is successful is that we give away our art. We're not suing our fans. We've always been interactive with our fans, and we've let our fans, if, for example, a bar in Seattle wants to show Terra Firma or Romeo and Juliet, and they don't charge admission, we'll let them do that. There were some kids who wanted to make a musical of Toxic Avenger in Portland, Oregon. Some fans, they weren't really kids; they were probably in their 30s or 20s, and we let them do it. We didn't charge them for the rights; we let them do it for free. And a lot of my book explains how you can make money by giving your art away, and how copyright law is all screwed up. That the current copyright law is written mainly by Disney and the conglomerates, and it does not benefit you or me. It benefits the major corporations, the big media conglomerates who control the intellectual property of the world, which includes pharmaceutical and much more important items than just movie copyright. So
sure.
I'm a big proponent of net neutrality and file sharing, and
give me an example, because you just said making money by giving by giving work away, or letting the examples that you used. So can you give me an example of how to make money off of that?
Well, the Toxic Avenger has been made into a Broadway musical, and it played a year off Broadway last year, and clearly we made money from that.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're bringing it to Broadway, and we have gross points. But we let two different groups do it for free, and we didn't grind them for whatever it is that Metallica wanted when they sued their fans, or whatever the folks making the Hurt Locker are suing their little fat 14-year-old fans who are blogging and not paying and not charging anybody.
Sure.
The copyright laws are outdated. Nina Paley is in my book. Nina Paley made a movie, a masterpiece called Sita Sings the Blues. It's an animated, feature-length animated movie. It's very good. She has made $275,000 by giving her movie away, because people make donations. They buy her little. She has some jewelry. She's got Sita Sings the Blues jewelry, and they buy her DVDs. They buy hers, but basically she lets anybody distribute her movie. Anyone anywhere can distribute her movie, and yet she has made quite a bit of money, enough so she doesn't have to have a day job. And
That's
it's
great.
all explained in my book. And
That's
I'll tell
great.
you, Troma has benefited enormously from piracy. In Russia, they pirated our movies for years, and we never got a dime. But then when the wall came down and greed, and capitalism set in Russia, suddenly there were copyright laws, and we were famous by then. Troma has a big cult following in Russia, and we started making money. And so for the independent artist, the file sharing and the current copyright laws the file sharing can be a good thing, and the copyright law must be changed. And I'm not alone in this. There is a very erudite Lawrence Lessig, the professor at Stanford, although maybe he's at Columbia now. He has written a book called Remix, all about the fact that today's copyright law is nothing compared to what Jefferson originally had envisioned. And I talk about that in my book, and I give you the history of it, and I show you that the current copyright law is basically playing into the hands of a very small, very rich, powerful elite, and screwing everybody else.
Well, speaking of that, let's talk about film distribution and DVD distribution, which can be an arcane business. What should young filmmakers know about that?
Well, I think that they should be part of it. As a director now, more than ever, social networking is, and I don't think that's any surprise to anybody, but I talk a lot in my book, and I've interviewed other directors. About half my book, Sell Your Own Damn Movie, talks about my and Troma's system of distribution, but the other half of the book is comprised of interviews and sidebars and essays by and about successful distributors, so that you've got the guys. Let's say one of my readers wants to be in with a major mainstream company. Well, Summit Distribution is a huge company. They're independent. They distribute Twilight. They produced Twilight in conjunction with a couple of other companies, but they distribute it. And they also were involved producing and distributing Step Up movies. They've got the movie out now called A Better Life. And they are they're a mini major. So if you want to work with them, I lay it all out for you. In my book, I interviewed the head of distribution for that book. I interviewed the head of distribution for Summit. Also, Paranormal Activity is probably the most profitable movie in history, dollar for dollar. And I interviewed Orrin Pelly, and he talks about how he, as the filmmaker, shepherded the movie from oblivion into a major release through Spielberg and Paramount, and that's a very interesting and educational story. So I've got a whole food chain of the distribution methods, not just Troma's, but and Troma's obviously has been successful, but the people distributing no-budget movies out of their basement, and people who are working with foreign sales agents and producers representatives. I've got a guide to film festivals in the book. Film festivals that might be of some use. Most are not terribly useful, but they're all important. And it basically, if you want a Bible for selling your own damn movie in today's new age, Sell Your Own Damn Movie really is the Bible for that, and there's nothing that it doesn't cover. And I think that if the independent filmmaker does not get a $1 billion distribution deal from Time Warner, I would say the next best thing is to buy my book and follow, read it, and then make some decisions.
Great. Well, I had a question for you. A lot of people who listen to my podcast are writers, and some of them are starting to self-publish their novels and short stories as ebooks. Again, talking about the democratization of media in general. Given all of your knowledge over the years about promotion, publicity, and selling, do you have any kind of basic advice on how someone who is selling a creative work, in this case a book, can start to build an audience for their work and their creative vision? Well,
the first thing I think people should realize, and again, I'm a very peculiar case. Obviously, there is only one Troma in the history of cinema. There has only been, I think, we are the longest-running independent movie studio in history. But I think the big truth that I've come across, and I really believe in it, is that it isn't money that's the most valuable thing. It's time, people's time. And this whole notion of, oh, I've got to get a book advance. No, you don't have to get a book advance. What you have to do is get people's time, is get them to give you their time. That is so much more valuable than a few bucks for the book. Now, I do work with a publisher because I'm been around a long time, but
Sure.
and they're very good. Focal Press and Elsevier Press publications, they're very good. But if you have something that people want to see, Class of Newcomb High, a movie we made in 1986. I would say 99.9% of the world has never heard of it, but every year more and more people are buying the DVD or streaming it or distributing it or doing something because it's a word of mouth. They want to give their time to that movie because it's good. Class of Newcomb High is good. No, it didn't have a $100 million advertising campaign, but I guarantee you that in 1986 there were tons of movies that did have $100 million or equivalent advertising campaigns that are long forgotten. Movie theaters are still playing Class of Newcomb High. The Austin Draft House, Draft House. It's what's it called? Alamo Draft House in Austin. So it's the Entertainment Weekly's favorite movie theater. They just played Class of Newcomb High. So the point is, if you make something that's good, if you write something that's good,
it's evergreen
people
content.
are going to find it. People will find it one way or the other. But there's a big if. There's something called net neutrality. Net neutrality, and I talk about it in the book, and I've written about it. This is very important. The net neutrality means that the internet, it's the democratic internet, which we currently have. Anyone who has something to say can go on the internet and have as much right and as much attention as General Motors or President Obama or Time Warner. It's if you have something that's interesting, 2 Girls, 1 Cup, people will go there. 500,000 people go to Troma. 500,000 people go to Troma, and that helps us. You know, they go to our website because it's entertaining and it's fun. The problem is now, though, that the phone companies and the ISPs are trying to get rid of net neutrality. They want to have an expensive superhighway that only they can afford to navigate, and then the rest of us will be put on a dirt road, which will take a long time to buffer. And what they're trying to do is to have an NBC, ABC, CBS internet for the rich people, and only the rich people can afford it. And then everybody else will be on sort of a public access, bumpy dirt road that nobody will be able to find. So that, and there are billions of dollars being spent in Washington lobbying for this. I'm the chairman of the Independent Film and Television Alliance. That's the trade association for the independent industry. We spend maybe, less than $1 million in Washington, and the enemy is spending billions to get rid of net neutrality. And any of your listeners, any of your writers, any of your artists, or any of your entrepreneurs, you should really contact the FCC, Federal Communications Commission, or your local congressperson or President Obama, and make this a big issue, because it's our last democratic medium. And if anybody believes in the First Amendment, net neutrality is a major, major bulwark of the First Amendment.
Great. Well, again, we've been speaking with Lloyd Kaufman, director of The Toxic Avenger and the author of Sell Your Own Damn Movie. And I'm sure, as you've heard through this interview, if you are an entrepreneur or a creative person who's trying to sell their work, you can certainly benefit from taking a look at the book, Sell Your Own Damn Movie. Thanks for taking the time, Lloyd.
Well, thank you, Jeffrey, and thanks to your listeners for giving me their time. As I mentioned, it's much more valuable than money.
This is Lee Child, and I'm listening to the Reading and Writing Podcast.
Thanks for listening to my latest podcast. If you have a chance, please leave a review of the podcast in iTunes. It only takes a moment. Until next time, read some good books and be well.
Check out Audible and listen to Andrew McCarthy tell stories about his days as a member of the legendary 80s Brat Pack and star of movies like Pretty in Pink, Less Than Zero, and St. Elmo's Fire. It's a riveting and personal look behind the scenes and just one of the many incredible new releases, bestsellers, podcasts, originals, and more you can hear on Audible. Start a free 30-day trial today at audible.com.
From the refrigerator to the laundry room, there are more ways to save with M-Perks at Meijer. This week, find Coca-Cola or Pepsi 12-pack cans for $3.99 with M-Perks, plus deposit where applicable. Lean Cuisine frozen meals are 4 for $9 with M-Perks. And Gain liquid laundry detergent is $11.99 with M-Perks. Plus, get free pickup on $35 or more. Find it all at Meijer. Exclusions apply. See all the deals in the Meijer app.